Julius Caesar. The man who claimed to conquer the world but couldn't conquer a knife fight. From debt dodging to wife swapping, crown teasing to Cleopatra-loving, and of course, his all-time favorite hobby, turning mass murder into a flex. History books call him a genius, but honestly, he was Rome's drama magnet, power-hungry diva, and the ultimate it's complicated relationship status. Sorry to interrupt, but Caesar built legions, Cleopatra built alliances. You can build this channel with one subscribe. Thanks. Rome's drama king. Julius Caesar, born in 100 BCE to a patrician family, didn't exactly start life at the top of Rome's food chain. He clawed his way up through political chaos, dodging enemies, debts, and even a pirate kidnapping where he roasted his captors and later crucified them for good measure. Caesar carved his legacy by conquering Gaul and then humble bragging in third-person commentaries like an ancient LinkedIn influencer. His resume sparkled with dictator for life, calendar reformer, July says hi, and Cleopatra's favorite Roman house guest. But ambition was his fatal flaw. Rome's senators weren't impressed with his divine cosplay. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, applause turned into daggers, and Caesar became the ultimate cautionary tale about grabbing too much power. Yet 2,000 years later, his conquests, calendar tweaks, and meme-worthy ego keep him trending. Caesar didn't just rule Rome. He branded himself into history, equal parts military genius, political diva, and tabloid star that just won't die. Dictator for life. Rome had a neat little tradition. Dictatorships were temporary, strictly for emergencies. Julius Caesar looked at that rule and thought, 6 months. Cute. I'll take forever. Declaring himself dictator perpetuo was less about stability and more about stapling a bullseye to his toga. To senators already side-eyeing his growing power, this wasn't leadership, it was monarchy in drag. Ordinary Romans, fiercely allergic to kings, weren't fooled either. Caesar only made things worse by stacking titles like trading cards, slapping his name on the new calendar, and reducing the Senate to his personal clapping section. Even allies squirmed at the thought of endless Caesar rule, because nothing screams republic like one man deciding literally everything. By crowning himself eternal boss, he didn't strengthen Rome. He set the stage for knives in the Senate chamber. Instead of fixing politics, Caesar guaranteed that his reign would end the hard way, proving once and for all that forever dictators rarely last long. Bad omens. If the universe ever wanted to warn someone, it practically lit up billboards for Julius Caesar. A soothsayer told him, "Beware the Ides of March." His wife Calpurnia dreamed of his murder and begged him not to leave the house. Priests reported alarming omens from sacrifices. Basically, the cosmos was screaming, "Don't step foot in the Senate today." And what did Caesar do? He rolled his eyes like someone ignoring Google Maps traffic alerts. For a brief moment, he actually listened to Calpurnia, but his so-called friends, the same conspirators sharpening daggers, talked him into going. So on March 15th, 44 BCE, he strutted into the Senate and was promptly stabbed by more than 20 men. The man who prided himself on foresight ignored every flashing red sign, proving that arrogance is deadlier than any prophecy. Caesar didn't just tempt fate, he scheduled an appointment with it, turning his assassination into history's most avoidable calendar reminder. Pirate revenge overkill. Most people kidnapped by pirates would be traumatized. Julius Caesar? He cracked jokes, promised he'd crucify them later, and then, plot twist, actually did it. After being ransomed and released, Caesar didn't just move on. He personally raised a private army, tracked the pirates down, and nailed every last one to crosses. The local governor had sentenced them to slavery, which was the normal and far more merciful punishment. But Caesar decided slavery was too soft and dialed the retribution up to horror show levels. He did, in his mind, show compassion by slitting some throats first, because apparently mercy meant killing you faster. What this really revealed was his flair for theatrical vengeance. Caesar wasn't just about winning battles. He was about making enemies regret ever crossing him in the most public way possible. Pirates probably kicked themselves for not demanding a higher ransom. Insult Julius Caesar once, and you didn't just get revenge, you got a headline. Clodius scandal. You'd think a sacred women-only religious festival would be safe from scandal, but not in Caesar's house. Enter Publius Clodius Pulcher, Rome's resident chaos goblin, who thought it would be clever to sneak into the Bonadea festival disguised as a woman. And where did he pull this stunt? At Caesar's own home, where his wife Pompeia was hosting. Rumor spread that Clodius was aiming to seduce her, which is basically the Roman version of flirting with your boss's spouse at a corporate retreat. The fallout was instant. Caesar divorced Pompeia with record speed and delivered one of history's coldest mic drops. Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. Translation: it didn't matter if she cheated. The embarrassment was fatal. Clodius wriggled out of punishment with bribes and political allies, leaving Caesar humiliated and powerless. The entire fiasco played out like Real Housewives of the Roman Republic. Gossip, scandal, betrayal, and one of Rome's most powerful men left looking like a fool. Crossing the Rubicon and Civil War. Nothing screams loyal citizen like starting a civil war against your own country. In 49 BCE, Caesar marched to the Rubicon River, looked at his soldiers, and essentially said, "Let's break the law together." Roman generals weren't allowed to bring their armies into Italy, but Caesar wasn't about to let a little legality stand in the way of ambition. Crossing the Rubicon ignited a civil war that tore Italy, Greece, and Spain apart. Cities burned, farms crumbled, and Romans killed Romans. All while Caesar framed it as restoring dignity to the Republic. Translation: it was a branding exercise for his personal power grab. His old ally Pompey the Great, once his BFF and son-in-law, became his sworn enemy in one of history's nastiest divorces. When the dust settled, Caesar stood victorious, crowned dictator for life, and called himself savior of Rome. Reality check? He broke the Republic just so he could brag about fixing it under his own rules. Defiance of Sulla. Most ambitious young Romans knew better than to provoke Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the dictator who executed enemies for fun. Julius Caesar, however, seemed born allergic to common sense. When Sulla ordered him to divorce his wife Cornelia, daughter of a rival political family, Caesar flat out refused. That wasn't just bold. It was borderline suicidal. Sulla unleashed bounty hunters, forcing Caesar into hiding while friends and relatives scrambled to bribe officials to keep him alive. Eventually, Sulla backed off, but not before muttering that within Caesar he saw many Mariuses. A chilling prophecy that this reckless upstart might one day become a greater threat to the Republic than even his late uncle. Spoiler, he nailed it. The incident defined Caesar's brand early on. Rules were optional, death was negotiable, and compromise was for lesser men. Admirable courage? Maybe. Reckless arrogance? Definitely. Surviving Sulla only convinced Caesar that destiny was on his side, a dangerous mindset Rome would soon pay for dearly. Debt-fueled ambition. Before Caesar conquered Gaul, he conquered debt like an Olympic sport. By his early 30s, he was buried under mountains of IOUs, thanks to throwing lavish gladiator games, feasts, and bribes, basically Rome's version of political Kickstarter. In a city where votes didn't come cheap, Caesar spent like a man allergic to financial limits. Creditors panicked, senators mocked, and he looked one step away from bankruptcy. Enter Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, who became Caesar's unofficial sugar daddy, bailing him out in exchange for political favors. With Crassus funding the madness, Caesar turned debt into a ladder, dazzling voters while digging himself deeper in the red. But there was a catch. His survival now depended on winning wars to plunder wealth and repay creditors. Conquests weren't just about glory. They were about balance sheets. In modern terms, Caesar maxed out 10 credit cards, then launched foreign invasions just to pay them off. Strategic genius or reckless addict? Depends who you ask. Cleopatra affair and scandal. If workplace romances are messy, Caesar's fling with Cleopatra was the ancient world's full-blown tabloid explosion. Marching into Egypt to help her secure the throne, the middle-aged general quickly upgraded from political ally to palace roommate. Subtlety? Nowhere in sight. He then upped the drama by parading Cleopatra around Rome, setting her up in a luxury villa, and oh yes, he was still married to Calpurnia. Romans, already skeptical of foreign influence, were horrified to see their leader flaunt a queen as if she were Rome's new first lady. Caesar went further, installing a golden statue of Cleopatra in the temple of Venus Genetrix, essentially declaring, "She's my girlfriend and divine family now." To conservatives, it reeked of Eastern corruption. To the public, it felt like their leader was simping for a foreign monarch while his actual wife sulked at home. Shakespeare may have romanticized it later, but to Caesar's contemporaries, it was reality TV scandal, complete with pearls, politics, and betrayal. Land reform, backlash. Caesar's land reforms looked like charity to the masses, but to the Senate's elite, they were pure nightmare fuel. He handed out farmland to veterans and the urban poor, which won him cheers from ordinary Romans but absolute rage from aristocrats. To them, this wasn't generosity. It was Caesar buying loyalty with prime real estate. Imagine your rival showing up at work handing out free iPhones while you're left empty-handed. That's how Rome's nobility felt as their influence evaporated. Land, the cornerstone of their power, was being redistributed like party favors. Worse, Caesar ensured that grateful veterans literally owed him their livelihoods, guaranteeing an army of loyal supporters who wouldn't hesitate to fight for him again. Political Strategy 101. Secure your fan base with land deeds and swords. For senators, though, it was existential terror. He wasn't just undermining their wealth, he was rewriting Rome's power structure. The backlash was inevitable, and it helped pave the road to his assassination. Flirting with kingship. Rome hated kings like cats hate water. The very word rex was political poison, tied to centuries of collective trauma. And yet Caesar couldn't resist poking the royal bear. Statues of him spread across the city, his titles stacked up like Pokemon cards, and then came the infamous Lupercalia stunt. Mark Antony dramatically offered him a crown, not once but 3 times, while Caesar refused with the fake humility of a bad stage actor angling for applause. Romans weren't fooled. It was obvious Caesar wanted the optics of reluctance while sneakily testing public reaction. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. The crowd booed, the Senate panicked, and his enemies sharpened daggers. Caesar's, "I don't want to be king, unless..." performance made him look desperate and power-hungry in a republic violently allergic to monarchy. Theatrics aside, he practically auditioned for a role Rome had sworn never to cast again. PR stunt turned PR disaster, and soon enough, the knives came out. Gallic Wars brutality. The Gallic Wars may be praised as strategic genius, but strip away the spin and you're left with mass carnage dressed as glory. Over 8 years, Caesar's legion slaughtered or enslaved nearly 1 million Gauls, erasing entire tribes to pad his resume and bankroll his debts. His commentaries painted the campaigns as noble defense, but really, they were propaganda pamphlets disguised as history. Third-person bragging sessions that downplayed massacres and hyped his brilliance. Cities burned, populations chained, resistance crushed with merciless efficiency. His masterpiece at Alesia, where Vercingetorix surrendered, became textbook strategy, but at the cost of thousands of Gauls starving like penned cattle. Romans cheered his triumphs, but even some contemporaries flinched at the sheer scale of the bloodshed. For Caesar, Gaul wasn't about protecting Rome. It was about plunder, political capital, and personal fame. His so-called genius came at a staggering human price. Proof that sometimes glory is just ancient war crimes with better PR. Affairs with senators' wives. Or get Tinder scandals. Caesar was Rome's original homewrecker-in-chief. He had a notorious reputation for seducing senators' wives, which was essentially the fastest way to turn colleagues into sworn enemies. His most infamous fling? Servilia, mother of Brutus, the very Brutus who later helped stab him. That's an awkward family drama Shakespeare didn't even need to exaggerate. Gossip claims Caesar gifted her an extravagant pearl worth a fortune, flaunting the affair like a political trophy. For humiliated husbands, this wasn't just betrayal. It was Caesar laughing in their faces. Rumors spread like wildfire. Poets roasted him and rivals fumed. Less about his conquests on the battlefield and more about his bedroom victories. Each affair was another match tossed onto the Senate's resentment. If enemy collecting was a sport, Caesar played it like an Olympian. Conquer Gaul, grab dictatorial power, and casually romance half the Senate's spouses. In the end, his bedroom politics probably earned him as many daggers as his throne. Pontifex Maximus bribery. The role of Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest, was supposed to embody piety and tradition. For Caesar, it was just another trophy to buy. In 63 BCE, he allegedly spent staggering sums bribing voters to secure the position, defeating older, more respectable candidates. One ancient account even claims he told his mother before the election, "Today you'll see me as Pontifex or in exile." Subtlety clearly wasn't his strong suit. Once elected, he barely pretended to care about religious duties, shoving them aside for wars, politics, and affairs. To critics, he wasn't a priest, but a corrupt politician cosplaying holiness. Romans valued religion as the backbone of their society, so his blatant purchase of the role was scandalous. Yet Caesar's charisma made people shrug and move on. The irony? The man who supposedly mediated between mortals and gods was more interested in debts, bribes, and Cleopatra. Nothing screams sacred leadership like buying your way to divinity. Coinage ego. If Instagram selfies had existed in 44 BCE, Julius Caesar would have broken the algorithm daily. He became the first living Roman to stamp his own face on coins, a move so arrogant even his allies cringed. Traditionally, that honor belonged only to gods and long-dead heroes because Rome despised anything that smelled like monarchy. But Caesar couldn't wait for death. He wanted his empire jingling with his logo immediately. Suddenly, every tax payment came with a smug reminder of who was boss. Imagine buying bread, getting change, and Caesar's grin stares back at you. Propaganda disguised as pocket money. For him, it was branding brilliance. For critics, it was a blaring red flag that screamed wannabe king. The coins weren't just currency, they were miniature campaign posters you couldn't escape. For a man obsessed with legacy, it worked brilliantly. For the Senate, though, it was confirmation that Caesar didn't see himself as Rome's leader. He saw himself as Rome itself. Nicomedes' rumor. Rome had many insults, but none clung to Caesar like the scandal with King Nicomedes IV of Bithynia. As a teenager, Caesar spent time at the king's court, and gossip spread that he'd been the ruler's special guest. Translation: the submissive partner. In macho Roman culture, that role was political kryptonite. His enemies never let it go. They mocked him as the Queen of Bithynia, sang tavern songs about it, and dragged the rumor into every election debate. Caesar, furious, denied it for years, but the harder he pushed back, the more people smirked. In Rome, sex itself wasn't shameful, but being passive was humiliating, and Caesar's rivals weaponized that double standard masterfully. The rumor outlived military victories, political reforms, even his conquest of Gaul. It was proof that in Roman politics, one juicy bedroom story could wound deeper than a sword. Caesar may have built an empire, but the shadow of Nicomedes followed him everywhere, like ancient gossip column ink. Over-the-top honors. When people start comparing you to gods, most would tone it down. Julius Caesar hit the gas. He happily accepted temples, statues, parades, and even a golden chair in the Senate, making himself look less like a leader and more like Jupiter's younger cousin. Romans valued humility and hated anything resembling monarchy, So watching their dictator soak up divine honors felt like blasphemy in real time. Senators grit their teeth, applauded politely, and secretly sharpened knives. These weren't harmless celebrations. They were red flags to traditionalists who believed Rome's greatness came from its institutions, not one man's ego trip. Caesar loved every minute, basking in godlike adoration, blind to the alienation he was causing among Rome's elite. Ordinary citizens might have enjoyed the spectacle, but for the Senate, it confirmed their worst fears. That Caesar wasn't just powerful, he was untouchable. The irony? The more divine he tried to appear, the more mortal his fate became. Spanish campaign opportunism. Caesar's early governorship in Spain wasn't about noble duty, it was about cash flow. Drowning in debt, he treated conquest like a personal side hustle. Local tribes who hadn't even picked fights suddenly found themselves plundered, enslaved, or slaughtered, their wealth carted off to soothe his creditors. Spain wasn't a province, it was Caesar's ATM, dispensing gold and slaves with every raid. Sure, he gained military glory, but contemporaries saw the truth. Opportunistic brutality disguised as restoring Roman order. His triumphal parades in Rome were funded by massacres of tribes that barely knew Rome existed. Worse, he funneled the loot directly into his political career, using blood money to climb the ladder. Romans cheered the victories, blind to the fact that this wasn't national security. It was personal bankruptcy management. Spain foreshadowed his later campaigns in Gaul. Ruthless efficiency, staggering brutality, and ambition wrapped in propaganda. Caesar wasn't conquering for Rome, he was balancing his checkbook in blood. Year of confusion. Rome's old lunar calendar was a mess, so Caesar fixed it with the Julian system in 46 BCE. Out went the 355-day year, and came a 365.25-day solar year with leap years every 4 years. Sounds smart, right? Except the rollout was chaos. Priests botched the math, adding leap years every 3 years instead of 4, throwing festivals into disarray. To realign time, Caesar even added a ridiculous 445-day year of confusion. Citizens grumbled that he wasn't reforming time, he was hijacking it. Traditionalists fumed that sacred festivals tied to the lunar cycle were scrambled, while poets mocked him for caring more about stars than citizens. Naming it the Julian calendar didn't exactly scream modesty either. For critics, this wasn't reform. It was another ego trip. Caesar stamping his name on the universe itself. Yet despite the chaos, the system endured for centuries. His body was stabbed to death, but his timeline conquered the world. Legacy secured, humility optional. Royal rejection. Picture 44. BCE, the Lupercalia Festival, and Caesar's loyal hype man Mark Antony puts on a show for the ages. In front of a roaring crowd, Antony offers Caesar a crown. Caesar theatrically refuses, not once, not twice, but 3 times, like a bad actor milking applause. The crowd cheers his humility, but everyone knew the stunt was staged to test public reaction. Romans weren't fooled. They saw a power-hungry diva pretending to be modest. Meanwhile, senators fumed, recognizing the manipulation for what it was. Monarchy cosplay in a republic allergic to kings. Theatrics aside, Caesar was flirting with kingship, pushing boundaries while dodging accountability. And the hypocrisy was glaring. He kept accepting kingly honors like golden thrones and divine statues while acting too humble for a crown. To the elite, it confirmed that Caesar wasn't restoring the Republic. He was slowly burying it. It was peak Caesar, a political trick wrapped in pageantry, planting seeds of his downfall. Self-promo scrolls. Caesar's Commentary de Bello Gallico is history's most shameless humble brag. Written during his Gallic campaigns, it describes his conquests entirely in the third person. Caesar did this, Caesar did that, as if Julius himself weren't holding the pen. The effect? Propaganda disguised as objective reporting. By stripping out the I, he created the illusion of impartiality while feeding Rome a steady diet of Caesar as legend. Every victory was magnified. every failure softened, turning blood-soaked wars into bedtime stories of brilliance. Romans loved it, critics rolled their eyes, but the PR worked. He downplayed brutal realities like massacres and slavery while spotlighting his genius, shaping how Rome remembered the wars. It was less history than self-written fan fiction. Senators saw the manipulation but couldn't stop the hype machine. Caesar wasn't just fighting Gauls. He was fighting for his reputation, and his third-person propaganda made him untouchable. In short, he invented the art of writing glowing Yelp reviews about yourself. Mic drop moment. Veni, vidi, vici. 3 words, infinite smugness. After crushing King Pharnaces II at Zela in 47 BCE, Caesar dropped the ultimate mic line. I came, I saw, I conquered. It wasn't a battle report. It was branding genius. Short, sharp, dripping with arrogance, the phrase reduced an entire campaign to Caesar flexing on the world. Romans plastered it on placards, senators cringed, and enemies squirmed while he strutted like a rock star general. The brilliance of the phrase was its simplicity. It shouted, "I'm unstoppable," without wasting syllables. But it was also pure ego. No credit to his soldiers, no humility, just Caesar hogging the glory. To critics, it was proof of his king-sized ambitions, another nail in the Republic's coffin. Yet the slogan worked. 2 millennia later, we still quote it, proof that Caesar's PR instincts were as sharp as his swords. At the time, though, it only made him look more like the monarch Rome swore it would never accept. Bald betrayal. Julius Caesar could conquer nations, but not his receding hairline. By his 40s, his shiny scalp was comedy gold across Rome. Poets mocked him, soldiers joked about it, and rivals quipped that he lost hair faster than battles. Image-conscious Caesar was mortified, so he turned the laurel crown into his personal toupee, tilting it forward to hide the bald spot. The trick was so obvious it made people laugh harder. Ancient sources like Suetonius even claim he passed a law allowing him to wear the crown everywhere, as if Rome's dictator needed legal permission to mask his scalp. He tried comb-overs too, brushing a few sad strands forward, making him look less like a conqueror and more like the Republic's first bad barber customer. In a culture where hair equaled power, baldness chipped at his godlike image. Rome's greatest general could rewrite calendars, win wars, and bed queens. But a shiny forehead humbled him like nothing else. United in hate. Caesar was so unbearable that he united enemies who normally would have been at each other's throats. By 44 BCE, his endless power grabs, dictator for life, divine honors, kingship stunts, had alienated almost every faction in Rome. The result? A bipartisan conspiracy of over 60 senators, from hardcore Republicans to former allies he'd pardoned, plotting his murder. That's right, his mercy policy backfired spectacularly. Men he spared like Brutus turned around and joined the assassination squad. Pompey loyalists, traditionalists, and even moderates all agreed on one thing. Caesar had to go. His arrogance, propaganda, and Cleopatra romance convinced Rome's elite that he was steering the Republic toward monarchy. He ignored warnings from soothsayers, priests, even Calpurnia's nightmares, until he walked straight into his own death scene. The irony? The man who divided Rome with civil wars finally united it in hatred. His greatest achievement wasn't conquering Gaul or Egypt. It was assembling the most diverse hate club in Roman history. And there you have it. What do you think of Julius Caesar? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.